May God, Ahura Mazda, protect this country, Persia, from a hostile army, from famine, and from the lie. Iranian tribes still practice seasonal migrations. About 3,000 years ago, similar migrations on a grander scale changed the whole history of the ancient world. The Aryans, who constituted a branch of Indo-Europeans and who had first settled in the southern Siberian plains, started their southward migration no later than the beginning of the first millennium BC. The fertile foothills of Zagros soon became their new homeland. It was here that they eventually found their favorite paradise and called it by their own ethnic name.
Our homeland is a very extensive country. It has got its name from the name of the Aryan people. Its old form was Airan Khashatra, meaning the land or kingdom of the Aryans. And this was subsequently developed to Iran Shah and shortened to Iran. A number of prominent Aryan tribes, such as the Medes, Persians, Khwarezmians, Sogdians, Bactrians, and Heratians, settled in this extensive country, and banding together under the leadership of the Medes and Achaemenids, they created a great state. These people believed in a sort of monotheism, which was reformed and made more ethical by Zoroaster. They considered natural phenomena, such as water, wind, earth, and fire, as divine attributes. But it would be a mistake to regard them as worshippers of those elements. This distinction is made perfectly clear in the Shahnameh, or the Book of Kings, the epical history of Iranian people. Our ancestors' faith was throughout ages the worship of God, none other indeed. Don't call them fire worshippers then, for they revered God, who is all good. They held then the fire of lovely colour as Arabs hold today the stone for altar.
In the middle of the 6th century BC, the Iranians, led by Cyrus the Great, a Persian of the Achaemenid family, created a world empire, the greatest state that history knew until that time. His son Cambyses added Egypt to it and was succeeded by his cousin Darius the Great, who ruled for 36 years. By this time, the empire reached its greatest extent, stretching from the Indus Valley and Central Asia on the east to Libya and the Danube River on the west. The characteristics of the Persian Empire were respect for the subject people, religious tolerance, promotion of trade, art, and culture. The Persian kings did not live in a single place during the entire year. They migrated seasonally. They resided in Babylon and Susa during the colder months, and Ekbatana, in the cooler foothills of the Alvand, served as their summer capital. These three cities were the political, economical, and administrative centers. But there were two other cities in the heartland of the empire which were regarded as ritual and sacred capitals. One was Pasargadi, which was used during coronation ceremonies. The other was Parse or Persepolis, founded as a place for holding the great annual feast of Nowruz, or the New Year's Day, which the Iranians have always celebrated with great pomp and circumstances at the beginning of the spring.
Persepolis is the Greek designation for the city that was originally called Parse by the Persians, which applied to both the city and its acropolis. The name is attested in Achaemenid inscriptions, but after the fall of the Persian Empire and the destruction of the city, people were no longer able to read royal documents, so they forgot the memory of Achaemenids and the very name of the city. Later, the Sassanids called it the 100-columned. On the other hand, in Iranian tradition, a king called Jamshid was the symbol of kingship, organizer of the society, and builder of magnificent stone palaces. It was believed that he instituted the New Year's Day feast, when his subjects bore him upon his throne from one palace to another. All these were recalled by the builders of Persepolis. So people came to call the site Takht-e Jamshid, meaning the throne of Jamshid, a name which has been current for 1,000 years.
Around 518 BC, Darius the Great selected a huge rock on the northwestern side of the Mithra mountain, now called Mount of Mercy, for building a fort containing great palaces and a treasury. The majestic structures were built during the reigns of Darius, his son Xerxes, and his grandson Artaxerxes I. Says Xerxes the king, "Much else that is beautiful was built in this Parse, which I built and which my father built. Whatever has been built and seems beautiful, all that by the favor of Ahura Mazda we built." It took many years for this giant platform, covering more than 125,000 square meters, to become prepared for the construction of the palatial complex. At the same time, some watercourses were dug into the bedrock and the hillside and prepared an outlet in the form of a long and deep moat located behind the eastern wall. But later, when the moat filled up, the rainwater flowing from the adjacent mountain gradually destroyed most of the eastern fortification. Thus, the debris piled up in the palace area and partially buried it. It was in the early 20th century that archaeologists excavated the site and revealed the original features. It became clear that Persepolis, which was the Acropolis of Parse, contained several important quarters. The entrance main staircase and a gatehouse. The official and ceremonial palace of Apadana. Residential area and small private palaces. The royal treasury. The 100-column hall. And the series of fortifications beyond which lay the city of Parse.
Persepolis is the ruined citadel of the city of Parse, and this, here, is the fortification wall. Beyond this wall lay the great city of Parse, built mainly in the traditional Persian method of mud brick architecture. Therefore, once the city was burnt down by Alexander and destroyed, its remnants rapidly deteriorated and vanished, leaving only a bare plain. But Alexander's historians had reported, and Diodorus of Sicily quotes them, that there stood on this site the richest city under the sun, the largest on earth. Of that wonder, only a few stone blocks marking manor houses remain today. The rest is gone.
Now let us describe the main parts of Persepolis. The entrance stairway. This platform is reached by a grand double-reversed staircase on the northwest, each flight having 111 steps, each of which is 7 meters long and 38 centimeters deep, but has a short rise of 10 centimeters. The steps were deliberately given broad length and short height so that the large number of military and civil officers, as well as the representatives of the subject nations who came here with their gifts, could climb with ease and in groups, just as one sees the dignitaries shown climbing the steps of the Tripylon staircase. To the east of the grand stairway lies a small palace named in its inscriptions as the Gate of All Nations. The delegations from the subject peoples of the Achaemenid Empire first assembled here and then were ushered to the audience palaces. Two massive guardian bulls supported the pillars of the west doorway. They faced westwards, that is, towards the plain and the arriving guests. Passing through this entrance, they entered a large four-columned hall which served as a waiting room and sat on a bench of black marble-like stone 52 centimeters high and 52 centimeters deep, abutting the walls.
Delegations of various peoples came here from every corner of the Persian Empire and arranged in groups according to the distance of their lands from Parsi. They took their appointed seats on this side, awaiting ushers to lead them. Dignitaries representing Iranian nobility also came and sat on the bench along that side. The walls behind them were covered with glazed tiles, ornamented with patterns of cypress and palm trees, lotus flowers and stars, giving the hall a dazzling gaiety and brilliance. The master of ceremonies, who stood on this platform, observing the audience hall, was given a sign by the chief of protocol, standing next to the king in the Apadana, to send forth the delegates, one after another. The delegates proceeded through the southern doorway, while Iranian dignitaries passed through the eastern doorway.
The eastern doorway is similar in shape and size to the western entrance, but here, instead of the guardian bulls, a human-headed winged bull supports each pillar. The delegates representing subject peoples proceeded with their gifts towards the palace and climbed up its staircases to be received in the royal audience.
Having climbed up the staircases and entered the portico, the dignitaries and royal guests were now led into the hall through one of these doorways. Not much has been left of the original doorways, except for the round door sills and the locking place. But the guests would have seen gigantic double-leaved doors, 18 meters high, and covered with sheets of gold and silver-adorned floral patterns, framing figures of lions and bulls. On ceremonial occasions, the two leaves of each door would be opened inwards, allowing people to enter or exit the hall.
This is the Apadana, the largest and most splendid part of Persepolis, which took 30 years to complete.
The Apadana Hall and its three porticos are the most magnificent monuments of the ancient world. It covers an area of 3,600 square meters, and its tall, slender columns, reaching a height of nearly 20 meters, are unparalleled in beauty and stature. Its walls were adorned with glazed tiles, decorated with variegated floral motifs, rows of cypress and palm trees, files of soldiers, even cuneiform inscriptions. The floor was covered with costly carpets and rugs. After entering the hall, the dignitaries and delegates representing subject nations were received in audience by the great king, and the Nowruz, or New Year festival, reached its climax.
Of the 72 columns originally supporting the Apadana's roof, only 14 are still standing today. Each column was composed of a bell shed or square base, a round torus, a fluted shaft, and a capital shaped in the form of a double-headed bull. The vast and heavy roof rested on massive beams of cedar or cypress. The capitals of the eastern portico, however, had a double-headed lion. In Persepolis, the walls were usually built of square-shaped mud brick, and they survive in some parts, but only to a low height.
I am now walking on the remnant of the Apadana's wall, trying to measure its width. It's nearly 6 meters. It originally stood to a height of 22 meters and surrounded the main hall. The roof, which rested on this wall, and 72 columns, covered a vast area, almost as large as a football field.
The construction of this outstanding palace was a great and memorable achievement. Sir Darius the Great ordered a trilingual inscription in Old Persian, Babylonian, and Elamite languages to be prepared, giving his name and the extent of his realm. It was written on 4 pairs of gold and silver tablets, and each pair was placed inside a stone box and deposited inside the foundation wall at the 4 corners of the hall. The most beautiful and important part of the Apadana, and indeed of Persepolis, is the eastern portico, which is adorned by exquisitely beautiful and magnificent sculptured reliefs. Among these, 12-petaled rosettes and cypress trees are of particular interest. In ancient Iran, this evergreen tree was regarded as auspicious and paradoxical, and the 12-petaled rosettes, besides being valued for their beauty and fragrance, were probably viewed as symbolizing the 12 months of the year, and the framing bands of these flowers and rows of the cypress and palm trees were interpreted as symbols of perpetual happiness and prosperity. A lion attacking a bull is shown below the sculptured cypress trees. The lion's head has been depicted frontally, a feature which is unusual in Persepolitan figures. The most acceptable interpretation of this scene is its astronomical explanation. As is well known, the lion, Leo, was from ancient time one of the signs of the zodiac, and always associated, even identified, in art, astronomy and literature, with the sun. The bull, Taurus, was also one of the signs of the zodiac. Around 500 BC, the entrance of the Leo to the Taurus coincided with the vernal equinox, which in the Iranian calendar marks the start of the New Year's Day, or Nowruz. Hence the lion goring the bull may be interpreted as referring to the Nowruz festival. The inner facade of the stairway facing the courtyard is sculptured with lines of soldiers, dignitaries and courtiers adorning one wing and 23 gift-bearing delegations on another. Since the art of perspective was still unknown, to indicate figures arranged in 3 parallel lines, they had to show them as 3 lines, one on top of the other. According to classical authors, the elite corps of the Persian army consisted of 10,000 selected foot soldiers, whose number never changed, because as soon as one died or was taken ill, another replaced him. For this reason, the corps was known as the Immortals. We are told that their uniforms were very colorful and shone with brilliant golden and purple designs. Hence, modern scholars identify foot soldiers represented in similar costumes on glazed bricks from Susa, now in the Louvre, as the Immortals, and by analogy consider these spearmen on the Apadana stairways also as representing the same elite division. The Immortals are followed by the dignitaries of the Persian Empire. They proceed in 2 lines. Most are shown not with the traditional rigidity associated with court rules, but relaxed, chatting to one another. These were the backbone of the empire and controlled the destiny of the state. Their exalted position allowed them such liberty as guests and friends of the king. Most of these noblemen carry a lotus-like blossom or flower, and some hold round objects like apple or colored egg, all of which are still associated with the Nowruz festival. Archaeological investigations have shown that the 2 highly beautiful sculptured scenes showing the royal audience, one of which is the Iran National Museum and the other in the Persepolis treasury, had originally ornamented the central facade of the Apadana stairways, but were later removed to the treasury for certain reasons. Undoubtedly, they depict the highlight of the royal audience. The king is enthroned under a canopy, and the heir to the throne and several senior officials stand behind him, while the master of ceremonies stands before the throne and reports on the proceedings of the festival, and ushers introduce, group by group, the gift-bearing delegations who have assembled from all parts of the empire. One of the first palaces built on the Persepolis platform was the Tachara. It is located to the southwest of the Apadana, facing south, that is, to the sun.
This is the private palace of Darius, probably the first Achaemenid palace built here. It's quite impressive and interesting on many points. For one, its facade was exactly modelled on Achaemenid royal tombs from Darius onwards. And secondly, the artistic works have been worked to such a refined polish and beauty that people often called it the Mirror Hall.
The columns of this palace were probably wooden, but no trace of them has survived. The floor everywhere had been paved with red covering and beautiful carpets. Close to the Mirror Hall, the palace of Xerxes, known as the Hadish, was built on the south side of the terrace. It measures 2,550 square meters and its floor stands 18 meters above the plain. Unfortunately, very little of it has survived Alexander's fire, which probably started right here. The harem of Xerxes is L-shaped and is situated south of the Hadish and west of the treasury. Its western wing was reconstructed in the 1930s and today serves as the headquarters of the Pasagadi Research Foundation and houses the Persepolis Library and Persepolis Museum.
Of course, when we speak of a museum, we think of a hall filled with precious objects. But Persepolis has been repeatedly plundered, first by Alexander and then by others. In addition, many valuable objects discovered here have been carried away by foreigners and excavators. And some better preserved reliefs and objects have also been taken to the Iran National Museum. Therefore, one should not expect to see this museum as a treasure house of many objects in precious materials, or a perfect state of preservation. However, this is an authentically reconstructed Achaemenid structure, built by the German architect Professor Friedrich Krefter in the 1930s. The column bases, tori, fluted shaft and capitals have all been fairly authentically reconstructed, making this a vivid example of an Achaemenid hall, where one can see how such a room received its light from doorways and windows. And everywhere, the features of Achaemenid architecture are accurately reproduced.
The Central Palace, or the Tripylon. This is the eastern doorway of the Tripylon. The two jambs of the doorway mirror image a ceremonial scene. The great king Artaxerxes I, son of Xerxes, is seated on a royal chair, and his crown prince stands behind him. Both are on the massive imperial throne, which is being carried into the hall by 28 representatives of the subject nations. The armlets and crowns and other adornments of the royal figures were originally made of precious materials and set into the stone, but they have long since vanished. The second largest palace of Persepolis was a splendid building, the central hall of which had 100 columns, and for that reason is called the Hall of 100 Columns.
We are now in the throne hall, better known as the Hall of 100 Columns. Its construction was started by Xerxes, and finished by his son, Artaxerxes I. One of the most magnificent palaces of Persepolis, it originally had 100 columns, 10 rows by 10, built of local dark grey marble-like stone, each with a bell-shaped base, round torus, fluted shaft, adorned on the top with floral rings and designs, and a double-headed bull capital on the back of which rested the heads of cedar rafters. Finely polished to a marble-like surface, the capitals were partially gilded, so the splendor of the hall was truly dazzling.
Some of the most beautiful Achaemenid artworks have been found in this area. One was the miniature bust of a young prince made from a paste of lapis lazuli with the eyes formed from precious stones, now lost. Another was a small tile made of the Egyptian blue ornamented with the figure of an eagle with outstretched wings. Such a figure was the royal ensign of the Persian Empire, and from there it was probably adopted in the Western world as national emblem of many countries. The Hall of 100 Columns was provided with 2 main southern entrance doorways and 2 main northern doorways. The jambs of the southern doorways are ornamented with the figures of the great king in audience and representatives of the subject nations carrying his throne. And these are the northern doorways.
On each of the northern door jambs, we see 5 rows of figures, each row consisting of 10 individuals. Each figure is shown from one side on one door jamb, but from the reverse side on the corresponding door jamb of the other doorway. To demonstrate this mirror image representation, let us take the 4th figure. We see that he wears his sword on the side which is seen frontally, but his bow case on the side which is almost hidden from view. Now, if we look at the sculptures on the corresponding jamb of the other doorway, we see the same 4th figure from the reverse side, so that this time his sword is hidden from view, but his bow case is fully visible. The 2 representations make up a complete figure in the round, as it were. That means that we have 2 sets of 50 figures on the 4 door jambs, shown once from the left and once from the right. These 100 individuals represent the most senior officials of the empire and provide an exact analogy to the symbolism of the 100 columns of the hall.
To the north of the Hall of 100 Columns, an unfinished gate could be seen.
This is the so-called unfinished gate, which was originally intended to be a counterpart of the Gate of All Nations, but remained incomplete. Here we see that half-worked slabs have been laid one above another, because the artists did not want to damage the lower parts by fallen chips when they were working on the upper parts. For this reason, the unfinished gate serves as a workshop where the researcher can imagine the masons at work and can follow the course of construction and stone carving.
As far as we know, the treasury was one of the first buildings to be constructed on the terrace platform. Its remains are still imposing. Amongst finds discovered here were 750 Elamite clay tablets, which preserve the records of payments to those employed at Persepolis. This archive is very important for throwing light on the administration of the work and state of workers at Persepolis. They give information on the division of work, the ethnic background of many employees, and their classification according to skills and gender. It has become clear that the state employed large numbers of workers at Persepolis, both men and women, and paid them adequately in kind or cash according to their skills and nature of their work. Two Achaemenid kings, Artaxerxes II and Artaxerxes III, had their tombs cut into the rock above Persepolis in the hill of the sacred mountain of Mithra, now called Mount of Mercy. Both of them have a facade which copy that of the Tachara, or Palace of Darius. The city of Parse, or Persepolis as the Greeks called it, was the richest and most magnificent city of the ancient world. 2 centuries of prosperity and domination and mastery had so enriched it that even the houses of ordinary residents were filled with costly furnishings and plenty of precious belongings, including gold and jewelry. But its prosperity came to an end early in 330 BC. Alexander spent 2 months here and then burned down its Acropolis, despite the urging of his old and wise advisor, Parmenion. It seems that the torching started in the beautiful palace of Hadish.
Hadish was once one of the most splendid Achaemenid palaces, but it is almost completely destroyed by fire. Only the bedrock foundation underneath the original floor and parts of the door jambs have survived. The catastrophic fire was kindled by Alexander. Here we come to the end of the Achaemenid period. Persepolis, which was once the crown jewel of world architecture, and the city of Parsi, which was once the most splendid town under the sun, all fell victim to Alexander's invasion and fire. Here then the story of Persepolis ends. But its memory survives, always associated with those who built it and he who destroyed it.